Greetings, everyone, and this is our Healing Me First podcast episode with Lenise Dazzel-Harris of We Create Shops.
Hi,
Welcome,
good
welcome,
morning.
welcome. Today we are talking about healing, manifestation, and the work of internal work, right? Right? The
Mhm.
healing work of internal work. And this is the work of Lenise Dazzel. I want you to tell them a little bit more about what you do, your background. And I'm going to tell the folks who are listening, she's my cousin. This is one of my first cousins, graduate of Howard University. And I just want you to tell the listeners a little bit more about yourself.
Hello, hello. Thank you for having me. Very excited to be here and share the work. So, I teach women how to have an abundant perspective. I help them to look at their beliefs, the ones that are limiting, and give them ways to overcome that, heal that, and move into seeing the abundance in all of life's challenges and beauty. And so my background is in event planning. I'm used to just bringing out the beauty in things, seeing where we can make something out of nothing, right? And I bring that work inside as well, where I am looking at what I've been given and seeing how I can use that to heal myself and others.
Wonderful, wonderful, wonderful. So, how did you get into this work of abundant work with women? Was there something that was happening in your life or something that you were seeing around you? What was actually happening?
So yeah, more to my background. After event planning, I was called to give back to the community. And so I started volunteering at a nonprofit organization for teens. And through that work, I was doing workshop facilitation, mindset training with the teens. And I realized that while I was making progress with them, the work needed to be continued at home. And so my focus then went to the mothers. If you can heal the mother, then you can heal the home. And then also, it can be passed down from generation to generation if it's a practice. And so I started doing workshop for the women, for mothers, for wives. And that just has led me down the path of like coaching, individual and group coaching, workshop facilitation, consulting organizations, leadership coaching. So just across the board, working on the mindsets for individuals and organizations.
Wow, that sounds exciting. Sounds like beautiful work. So what kinds of things are you seeing that people like sort of themes across these different spaces that you're in? What are some of the themes that you are seeing that, are common themes that people are dealing with in regards to healing themselves, mindset, these sorts of things that you look at?
A trend that I've been seeing is fear of the unknown, and also just the limiting beliefs that were passed down to us from generation to generation. Also, a lack of self-love. Everybody says that they love themselves, but it's shown in our actions that there's more work to do in how we treat ourselves and talk to ourselves and how we treat others.
That's very interesting. So give me an example of that when you say that, people say they love themselves, but you're seeing in the work that you're doing that it's really not the way it could be. Could you give an example of that and what that might look like and what you've seen?
Yeah, definitely. So one example might be eating habits. You're into the food business and wellness, and telling yourself, I can't give up meat. I can't give up sugar. I can't give up bread. That's a limiting belief. And when you do your own research, you see that these things aren't good for you, but you're going to eat them anyway. That's a simple form of a lack of self-love, because more than how something tastes, you want to eat to live, not live to eat, right? You want to focus on your wellness, What sacrifices are you willing to make so that your body can be its best self and work to its best capability? So that's just one example.
Girl, you know you talking my language. Yes. I mean, I find that people have a difficult time doing something different.
Hmm.
And, that mindset work, like what are some of the things that you do and you talk about when you are helping to shift mindsets so that people can really get into the work of self-interrogation and healing? Like, what are some of the things that, if you could sort of, you know, describe it, what are some of the things that people need to go through in order to shift their mindset?
You need to talk to someone that can hear you, that can listen. A lot of times, you go to your friends and they're listening to respond, or you guys have the same exact mindset. So they can't really tell you anything outside of what you really already know. But when you can talk to someone that can hear the limiting beliefs, reflect them back to you, speak it to you, and be open to changing, like, wow, okay, well, what can we're going to stay on the topic of food to keep it short. What can I do to change and implement that change step by step? But a lot of people's like, you don't know what you're talking about. Like, we're on the defense, we're resistant. So the first thing is being open to change, right? Being aware that there are limitations there. So I would say awareness is first, and then being open to the change. Once you do that, then you'll start to see where you need to implement the steps to transformation.
So, have you always, would you say, this abundant perspective that you really talk about, which I love the way you frame that. Do you feel like in your journey to where you are, because, I see you have two children now, young mom, wife, do you feel like in your journey that you've sort of had this abundant perspective? Or, has that been something that you've had to work towards developing for yourself, so that you can sort of really relate to the people that you work with? What's your story? What's your journey?
Yeah, I think I've always had an abundant perspective, but it was just looking in a different direction. And now I've been able, through the work, to look and see a bigger picture. So my healing journey, uh, um, I was just like everyone else, just kind of groupthink, following trends, but then also had my uniqueness. And it was the birth of my son that kind of like started this transformation. Are you frozen? Okay, you were so still. Um, it started this transformation, and the birth of my son brought up a lot of fear. And I mean, it caused so much anxiety. I think even one time I was telling you about this. Just driving down the highway, I would always think that like we're gonna die, like driving in a car. Like this was the fear because I was just feeling so much love. The fear of losing it overpowered me. And so I started to work with someone to really talk about what the fear is. Is it a valid fear? Acknowledge the fear. And through that work, I started realizing that there was a lot of conditioning, from cultural beliefs, taking on parental beliefs, beliefs of the community that stifled me. And once I noticed those beliefs and started to look back at my life and just really reflect, I saw how those beliefs showed up, in different areas. And so I started to go into the forgiveness work, forgiving myself, forgiving others, gratitude work, really asking myself the questions of what do I want? Who am I? How do I want to live and be? And from that, started using affirmations, sound healing, meditation, breath work, visualization to get to this place where abundant perspective. I can look at life's challenges and not blame, shame, feel guilt, take accountability with love and compassion.
That's beautiful. And, I think the thing that's really interesting about what you say is it's ongoing.
Mhm.
It's not something that you did it and then that's it. It's really work that we have to do all the time, right?
Mhm.
And re-examine. So the fear sometimes sets back in, and then we have to
Mhm.
face it head on. We have to address it, and we have these
Mhm.
tools that we can use to help us to navigate those moments when the fear or whatever that limiting belief, whatever it is, sets back in, right? And so for you, did anything change for you? What was your perspective? How, if you could measure it, because you now have a daughter, right?
Mhm.
What kinds of things came up for you in terms of perspective? Little girl now, two children now, right? What kinds of things were you feeling in that space?
Okay, so how did my perspective change? You're saying from then to now. Well, one, that healing is not linear, it's circular. And so before, my perspective was always striving to move past something and suppress it and forget about it, versus now I'm able to embrace it and look at it and learn about it, notice the patterns and the awareness of, okay, this is going to come up, and be aware of when it comes up and use those tools that I didn't have before when it does come back up. My perspective now is more about forgiveness versus, just cutting people off, trying to like understand, use compassion. My perspective now is all about love. Before, it was more about like trying to become, and now it's about being. In terms of having a daughter,
I know, right?
having a daughter is very sweet. It's a sweet experience, and I realized that, when I first wanted to have a baby, I was like, I gotta have a boy. I need to have a boy first because boys are easier, and I just don't know where we get that. We've been conditioned to believe that,
Or not.
but it also speaks to how we feel about ourselves too, right? And so when I found out that I was having a girl, I mean, I was so excited that I almost didn't want to believe it, right? And you're like, well, I gotta wait and see till she come. I gotta check. And it's realizing before that I was afraid of myself.
Mm,
And now that she's here, realizing that I have so much to give, so much to share. And it excites me, to give her all the tools that I now use versus before feeling like I don't know what to do. So I'd rather not have a girl.
mm. So do you feel like it was that? I mean, you may not have articulated it in that way, but I think I want to go back to what you said because I do hear some moms say, I'm all boy. I'm all boy.
Mm-hmm.
Easy. I have heard that narrative before.
Mm-hmm.
And you said it's you not looking at yourself. So I wanted you to kind of go a little deeper there. What do you mean by it's you not looking at yourself when you're saying things like, I just want this one versus this one, this kind of baby? Would unpack that for me?
Yeah. So for me, when I say that, I'm saying that you haven't forgiven your past. You haven't been compassionate with your inner child. And so you rather avoid like facing her. And a lot of times when we look at our children, we're looking at ourselves. And so instead of doing that inner work, we just say, you know what, I don't even want to deal with it. A girl is too much. They're too sassy. You know, they're that. That shows me that there's more work for you to do internally. More grace, more compassion, more forgiveness, more self-acceptance, more of seeing the beauty. That having a girl is awesome. Like she has a womb. Like that's a whole nother level.
It is. Isn't that a whole nother level? And you know
Yes.
what's beautiful? Someone once told me that when you have a daughter, when you're able to
Mm.
create your daughter, right? And let's say you are around to see her create her daughter,
Mm-hmm.
had that daughter in your
Mm-hmm.
since you
Yes.
were born. And
Yes.
it never happens like that, of course, through the boys.
Mm-hmm.
So a mother being able to see her grandchild that's adopted
Mm-hmm.
is like,
Mm-hmm.
oh my God, I've had you right in here forever. And now
Mm-hmm.
here you are. What an
Right.
amazing reflection of yourself, right? Isn't that dope?
Mm-hmm. That's beautiful. That's an abundant perspective right there.
Yeah, I mean, just like your mother's going through that. Your mom, it's
Mm-hmm.
like three generations. Your mother had her in her womb, and now she's right there, beholding, behold,
Yep.
here I am in the world.
Yep. Yep.
That's
But
great.
if you don't love yourself, it's gonna be hard to look at your children. It's gonna be hard to look at your grandchildren. So you see generations of women mistreating each other because the self-love isn't there.
Hmm. Yep. Isn't that deep?
It's deep. It's deep. We here to heal Black women though. Heal ourselves and heal each other and heal the next 7 generations.
Yes. So I'm with COVID. I'm just curious. You live in New York. Um,
Mm-hmm.
And, New York was one of those places where there was a lot going on with COVID a few months back, the
Mm-hmm.
timing of this podcast. So, I'm just wondering from a healing perspective, like what kinds of things were you seeing? What kinds of things were you feeling? What kinds of things are you still working through because you're still there? And, your clients, the people that you're working with, what kind of energy are you experiencing being in that space since it was such a huge loss of lives in New York?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So a lot of people were anxious. They were feeling just a lot of fear about going outside, about being home, about not being outside, especially a lot of social butterfly clients being out in the world and now having to really sit at home and reflect. That was scary for a lot of people. And that change took them completely left. And I saw a lot of interfamily issues coming up, which, again, with the abundant perspective, is a good thing, right? Aside from the lives lost, people were able to really sit at home and deal with the drama and trauma that we've been running from, with the busyness of work and happy hours and everything else going on. You had to really sit at home and face what life was looking like for you. And so I went into ritual. For me, that keeps me grounded, and I share all my rituals and tools with clients. So that's a lot of meditation, that's breathing. I started even for myself just doing more tantric practices to come into oneness with myself, balancing that divine masculine and feminine. Taking classes, more courses on mastering metamorphosis with a wonderful organization called Soul Wisdom Center with Karma Cloud. And that was teaching even me how to go through this change of being at home. That was a lot of movement work, yoga, flow. And so I actually took the pandemic to be with myself. I would share the work that I was doing with others, but it was really a focus on self during the last 6 months. going through my own changes of coming undone, looking at where my work was, and then working with others that were further along on the path so that I can bring myself back into wholeness. So that's what the pandemic was like for me. It was about looking within.
Beautiful. And so, as we wrap up, I want to know, if you can give this podcast is all about healing me first, and you gave some
Mhm.
really good things that you've done. What would be some things based on the work that you do, some offerings that you can just give to our listeners, in regards to that first line of healing? Like, what kinds of things would you recommend, if there are any, for them to really start thinking about self-healing?
Yes. I have three pillars of self healing. I mean, there's a lot of tools that we can use, but forgiveness, forgive yourself. You did the best you could with what you knew. Gratitude, be grateful for your experiences, find things to be grateful for, be grateful for your life. Look at the learning, be grateful for the learning, right? Don't get caught up in the narrative, but look at what was this experience trying to teach me? How can I grow from this? With love and compassion, right? Because you can have an experience and say, well, I'm never doing that again. That's fear based. How can I do this again differently? Self acceptance, looking at yourself honestly, truthfully, and saying, this is what I'm good at. This is where I can use more work. And start to accept the things about you that you wish you could change. For me, those three things lead you into deeper self love and into a greater awareness. And then you'll start to attract the tools that are best for you. You'll start to attract the community. When you start aligning with love, you'll start to attract all of your desires. So, yeah, just to keep it short, forgiveness, gratitude, self acceptance.
I love that. So, Lenise, tell people how they can connect with you, some of your offerings. If there's anything that's coming up, just please let's let the listeners know how they could connect, girl.
Yes, you can see me on Instagram. We underscore create shop. I have a website, createshopplanning.com. So you can email me there, and then I will contact you back right away for individual coaching, group coaching, a workshop facilitation, and consultation for organizations. I also have a workout class. It's a free workout class every morning from 7 to 7:30, where we're accountability partners on the journey. So we're working on our inside and our outside during the call. We don't listen to music, but we listen to affirmations and we listen to positive talks while we're working out on our bodies. So you can get to know me there, and then you'll learn even more about things that I have coming up.
Beautiful. All right. Well, thank you so much for participating in this podcast, Healing Me First. For those of you who are listening, Chef Bee, that's me. You can check me out at chefbee.com. And remember, that stands for Be Empowered, Energized, and Engaged. Thank you so much for tuning in to this episode of Healing Me First.
Thank you.